Hello, I'm Seema Rao, Deputy Director and Chief Experience Officer of the Akron Art Museum, and I'm joined by...
Barb White, Deputy Director of the AkronSummit County Public Library.
So we are neighbors at work. I often go to your museum, I go from my museum to your library, and I love to go when you change your displays. I'm usually, if you wonder, like, who's that person who's just checked out all the stuff, it's often me. So tell us about your organization.
Well, first of all, Seema, we love the business, so keep coming. And we love to see everyone at the library. Of course, we've got 19 locations, including the main library, which is directly across the street from the Akron Art Museum. Our locations are throughout Summit County, so we reach as far north as Northfield. We're down in Greene and points east and west, both city branches and suburban branches. And so we serve a very diverse population, and each of I think the strength of our organization is that each of our agencies really reflects the communities that they serve, and all, of course, guided by our core values and our mission. And our main library is our flagship building. And so, you come into main library, many floors, lots of displays, and an ever-changing collection and an ever-evolving collection, because library use has changed so much over the years.
You know, it's interesting. I just read a study about museum and arts and culture use over the pandemic, and they talked a lot about how our use has changed as well. And I will admit, as a museum pro, longtime museum pro, we looked at libraries because they had been changing long. You guys were ready for the pandemic. I don't know if our field was as ready for it. But I want to go back to something you said, because I don't know if our listeners realize, and I don't know if I actually ever thought about it. I focus, perhaps because Barb, we'll talk about a partnership in a second, on the first word of your name, the Akron part of AkronSummit County Library. But Summit County is so vast and it's so different. The city and, like, there's rural parts of Summit County.
Correct. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have some sister libraries in smaller independent systems in Summit County. So Hudson Peninsula, other libraries like that. And that really is, in some respects, just the result of history and geography. And there's a long story behind all of that. But we love those libraries, and in fact, meet with them monthly to talk about what's happening in Summit County. And I think it is the strength. Ohio has a very, very long and strong history of public libraries. We are really one of the strongest states in terms of public libraries, even with the diminishing funding that we've had over the decades. But just remains very, very strong in libraries, and Summit County particularly strong, and collaboration is such a big piece of this. So, it makes me smile when you say that the museum world has been looking at libraries, because, the library world has been looking at museums. And so, even before our relationship, there's been, I think, this synergy between our professions. And there's a synergy amongst the libraries as well. So we like to laugh and say we steal from each other, but really what we do is share. And when we've got a great idea, we always want to reach out and share it, and if we see another great idea, we reach out and find out more about it and try to take it. So
I don't know if our audiences realize how close we are as partners. And one of the things that we said early on when you and I first met is that it's good for both of us to have more people. That it is absolutely, sometimes I think in other fields, they talk about competition, that there's only one, this person either can go to that restaurant or this restaurant.
Right.
For me, it is better that people come to our quadrant of town, which sometimes, I think we're always trying to draw people to that part of Akron, meaning to your main branch. And we'll talk about we also have community branch partnerships too. But, we're always thinking about, for me, I really believe if somebody loves to read, they're more likely to love something that the museum's doing. That if they see something about culture in you, they see something about culture in me. And similarly, the opposite, right? If they're interested in learning, then they're interested in your organization. So that's sort of where I sort of see our partnership, and I love it because it means that we can serve people better.
Well, I think, both of our organizations are invested in recording and telling the human story, and in a commitment to having the folks in our community live abundantly and being creative. And so how can we truly be in competition when we're actually walking that same path together in different ways? So,
I love that.
I can send folks over to the art museum and say, not only can you see the works on view, but you can go visit the art bar and create, and you can say, you can go over to Main Library and any of the branches and see original art on the walls, or freestanding, and you can also go down to the tech zone and you can create.
No, it's true. Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We're partnering. You said something that I thought of. Art Bar is our drop by art space. And we had for Game Fest, actually, I don't know if somebody told you, I think it was one of your colleagues. I won't say her name on the press, but she came over because we had to make, we were using perler beads, and we're not all, Game Fest is our annual video game thing, but we're not all video gamers. So our person who runs Art Bar went over, or maybe your colleague came over to us and brought us books that we had on display to show them what the video games looked like so they could make their artworks. And we often have books, we often invite people to go back to make sense of our collection with your collection, because a thing that I always am surprised by about people in museums is that they perceive our goal is to just show you pretty things, right? Oh, it's not beautiful. And really, art museums are about history. We're about keeping this moment, inviting people to think. We're about emotions and history and feelings and ideas, of which beauty is one of them. But having you there is a great resource for us, because then we can say, oh my gosh, you want to know more about, like the 60s in America? We had a show just recently. There's a place right across the way. And you're right, it's about living in intellectual abundance. I love that. I'm gonna use that from now on. So one of the intellectual abundances that I'd love us to talk about is the idea that you might have things you love, beautiful things you love, intellectual things you love in your house. Now you're in a room full of books, or you're virtually in a room full of books. And that's something you can check out. But what's Art Library?
So Art Library, and I think one of the great things about Art Library is that it not only gives you that intellectual abundance and hits all of those points you were talking about, but it just affords an opportunity for varying perspectives. Because isn't that, you're seeing the piece through the eyes of the artist, and then also interpreting it through your experience and your vision. And so what Art Library does is give you the opportunity as a library customer to borrow original works for 4 weeks and to put them in your home, in your office, in your classroom, and to have an ever-changing display of an original piece of art, which, is often thought just the purview of folks who have money. But this really brings equity to that access, and really opens up that experience, so that I love to go to art museums. I grew up going to art museums, but the exhibit is static. It's in one place, and I can see it during open hours, and I have that experience. And there's something very special about that experience. And there's something that can sometimes seem almost ritual about that experience if that's a regular part of your life. But you put it on the wall of your home, and you're seeing it at all times of day, with all kinds of light, at all moments, and at all moods, right? And so it's a very different experience of the artist's work, and the pieces are so diverse. Now, the pieces came to be because of this incredible partnership with the Akron Art Museum, who commissioned these works beginning in 2018, so that we could have this borrowing collection. And as you know, that main library collection has grown. We've got about 40 works now. Odom Branch Library came on board next. We have a smaller collection there because the building has just a smaller footprint, about 10 works. And then the pandemic and the Art Mail Project, the brilliant Art Mail Project, also from our art museum neighbors right across the street, to give folks the opportunity to both express in smaller works this time we were living in, and also connect with people via mail, snail mail, because we couldn't get out and see anyone.
It was a moment. I remember the moment where Reggie and I were like, oh no, they can't check out things. Or my colleague, I should say. And I will say that, on both sides, there's a huge army of people who've been involved.
Absolutely.
In this
oh my gosh.
We're speaking for many, many people. But that art mail thing, one thing that you said I wanted to go back to, which is Odom. That's where I started. I started around the time we did Odom. And one of my favorite moments on the project was really early on in my tenure at Akron. I was with some of your colleagues at the Odom branch, and we were talking about letting people kind of pick their things. And they were saying, oh, I wouldn't pick that one. And it made me laugh because I was like, that's exactly right. But then they were like, oh, I want that one. And something that our curatorial team talks a lot about is how do we encourage people to understand that their choice is important, that you don't have to like all the things, but you also can like things. Like, you have the permission to have your opinion about art. And it's different than the work of the curatorial work of museums, that we're picking things for history, posterity. You in your home can pick things you like. And so that was an awesome moment. But to go back to Art Mail, so what happened was in 2020, we, as on our side, we had the generous sponsorship of Huntington Bank, and their goal was that we still get art to people. And I know that our colleagues from my side had talked to your side, and we were like, we don't know when we can open. And I remember one conversation with all of you, and thinking back to that recent past about how do we disinfect everything. I don't know. And there was so much uncertainty, and it was so nice to make one moment of certainty in that very uncertain time. And we knew that we could commission artists. We knew we could give away stuff, and we knew we could encourage people to make stuff. And I do think that those are all kind of central, even in Art Library, that by having art in your house, it also says it's okay to make art.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, so with the Art Mail Project, those original works that have now become the Art Library at North Hill Branch, about 25 works there, and they really are a trace. We also put those works in Summit Memory, which is our online resource for Summit County history, and really capturing that moment that we were all in.
I was looking back. You're right. They really do. We invited visual artists and writers to write about this moment. So they could do anything. And you are so right that they do. I was looking back. I'm very honored to say that one of our artists went on to win the MacArthur Prize. We had very little to do with it. But Hanif Abdurraqib from Columbus was one of the artists in that first year of Art Mail. And I was looking back on it, and I was thinking, it's funny because it's the recent past, but it already feels like history. And it is the whole year. That whole year was a capsule of the summer of 2020. Absolutely.
Okay. And so that's now at North Hill. Art Mail 2.0 works will be going to another branch later this year. And then we've got plans to do, programming, some collaborative programming around all of it. And it's just, I think it is a wonderful, all of this is a wonderful celebration of the creativity and the support of arts and culture in Northeast Ohio. Not all of the artists are Summit County artists, but they largely represent Northeast Ohio. Perhaps not exclusively, but largely do.
No, I think they all are. I double checked last night. Yeah.
So I think this project, in addition to making accessible things that typically are not accessible, it also is this tremendous celebration of who we are as a community, and who we want to be. I think this is to my mind, this is just the start. And I know, you're talking about what are libraries thinking about these days? We really think about, activating spaces. We know that library use has changed. Much of borrowing has gone virtual, not exclusively. We still have books on the shelf and people still take them out, but we think about how do we activate our space and continuing to look at our spaces and think, how do these become spaces for being creative, for understanding who we are, for understanding the perspectives of others. And how does library what does it mean? What does library as experience mean? And I think that experience is enriched by the partnerships that we have. And so the partnership with the Art Museum really just makes us a better place. And you can see it reaches out to our branch libraries as well. I think everyone has been touched.
No, I think that's so lucky for us, because as a museum, we don't have that same, I can't give anybody anything from our collection actually, right? I can do it virtually, but I can't do it in real life. And so for me to be able, as an organization, for us as an organization, to be able to work with you, to be in a community, that's the only chance we can do that. To take, you talk about libraries experience, but it's also a place. And I think actually that's where the program has been most successful. I think the main branch is perhaps it has, it's the oldest one. I think, it's awesome, but it's also a magnet of lots of communities. Whereas Odom, which is was our first neighborhood branch outpost. What's nice is that people who just are going to the library in their own neighborhood are happy to cross the Akron Art Museum, because they might not come to downtown and see the museum in real life. But they get a kind of a taste of it. And if they don't get a taste of it, there's just no way they're going to come. I mean, if we're not in their lives, if we're not going to them, why would they come to me?
Right. And, and we have we do so many table sits across the community and meet so many people that way. And for the same reason, they may never walk into us. We have to be where they are. And I think the other piece that we love about all of this is we always like to surprise people. I love the library of the unexpected. So I love when people say, you do that? And I think that's how we stay relevant. And I think that's how we stay interesting to the people that we serve. And I think it remains interesting for us who are working in libraries, so original artwork you can check out. Oh, absolutely. Cake pans. Well, sure.
I love your cake pans. I love your cake pans.
Musical instruments. Well, yeah, just go over there. You can check them out over there. I think that's, we want to keep surprising, not to dilute who we are. We're always the library. But in recognition of the fact that people curate their lives in many different ways. And we want to help facilitate that because we are a free space and we can't be everything to everyone, but we can be a lot of things to a lot of people.
We have that same ethos. And when we do, so this is a big sort of center point of our partnerships, but we also, we try to run things on the same day so more people downtown can do the same, do different things. And we're always emailing each other about partnership ideas. And I think actually it's that last thing that you said, that's why, because we can't choose for people how they're going to live their lives. We can just give them a lot of choices.
Sure.
And I think that's for me, a lot of our open art making spaces, for example, it's about people being in the building. There's no chance they're ever going to see the art in our galleries if they don't walk in the building. And so we don't know what's going to make them walk in. And I think that about your cake. I always think about your cake pan thing. I think it's one of my favorites. I'm not a very good baker, so I will never check one out, but I love the idea of it. It has a lot of possibilities, and it makes me think, what you're doing is you're saying, we have a whole collection of cookbooks and we have other stuff you didn't even know about, but start with the cake pan. And I think for us, that's what a lot of our, when we do social media, a lot of it is just here, just come on notice over here. Our podcast, a lot of that is the same. Our podcast and our TikToks is like our cake pans and our, our special collections, the musical instruments. That's what ours is, because it's oh, you like a musical instrument, you might like a book. For us, you might like a TikTok, you might come see the art. But it is that sort of idea that we are trying to bring bring a lot to the whole person.
Absolutely.
It's true. So
Absolutely.
what do you think would be, what are you hoping for next for our partnership?
Oh, gee. Well, you know, you and I have both talked about shared artist in residence. So I love the idea of that. Someone who spends time both in your building and then comes across and maybe sets up some studio space in our tech zone or our culture and AV department. That's always been a dream of mine. And I think, you know, the interesting things that we can do around Art Library, you know, when the direction may not always be creating new collections in yet another new branch. I mean, it may be and it may not. But what does it look like going forward? I think, you know, we have seen demonstrated and we believe in our hearts that it is a valuable effort. And so, and I know from, if I go down to, and I pass the art library at any one time, so many pieces are checked out. So I know it continues to resonate. I think what I'd love for us to do is create kind of a roadmap to who else needs to know about art library. You know, who isn't using it now, and how do we introduce it to them again or anew, and demonstrate the value of spending time with these works and having it on your wall and having your customers or your clients or your students see these changing works. You know, really drilling down in the role of those of art in those contexts and the value of being able to go to the library and borrow those pieces and spend time with them. And I think those sound like a few worthy goals we could in our spare time.
Doesn't sound like too much to do. We could do that. I mean, I think that, like, in summary, for me, our partnerships is about making us vital resources for the community. And the thing about both of our collections, and, you know, I don't know if people, long ago, I have an MIS, you know, that library books are your collection, just as museum, the artworks are our collection. Both of those are inanimate things. And we as humans have to animate those and make sure people understand that they're vital. I think people will take us for granted if we don't help them see why they could really, their lives would be enriched by being with our collections in whatever way they choose to do it. And that's the job of museum professionals, and that's the job of library professionals, right? To animate our collections. But I love doing it with you. I'm so glad that we have you as a partner. I always extol my favorite partnership. I think not favorite. We have a number of good partners. I shouldn't take sides, but certainly, certainly. And I do think to kind of go back to where we started, Akron Art Library is really a partnership of the library and the Akron Art Museum. And we kind of equal parts to it, equal parts to the, we choose the artworks, but you do all of the checkout, all the cataloging. That's hard for us. You house it. We make sure we box it up. But it's really a shared program that we both really love a lot and we're excited to be part of. So thank you very much for being here.
Oh, so appreciate it. I love working with you and love that we support each other's mission and vision, and what better to have in a partnership than that. So thanks so much.
Thank you.